Benjamin and I really enjoyed Spin too, which is part of a series.
Yes.
And it was interesting for us curating the film because we really get this sense of movement and energy with the film alongside these different weather conditions that we walk through. Could you tell us a little bit more about your process of making these films?
Yes. So my background is photography, and I started moving through ideas of psychogeography, how a place makes you feel. And I came across the work of an artist who worked with the KLF. Some of you will remember them. And he's called Gimpo, and he had this wonderful idea of, for 25 years, once a year, he drove for 25 hours around the M25 just to see where it went. And I liked that idea. And I like the idea of process as a, sort of outsourcing my brain to the process, as it were, and automating that. So all my spins have started on the 5th of the month at 5 a.m. and they've gone round the 5 kilometre Sizewell Park Run course for 5 hours, just to see where it goes. I have had collaborators who are in the room, but I'm sure they don't want to announce themselves. But when we talk about endurance, they've done extremely well, especially there was a lot of weather on that one. And I've tried different ways of capturing that, but that particular one was simply a 5-second exposure every 5 seconds as we walked round and round and round and round. And I've done nothing to it apart from add in field recordings. Yeah, and so I like that, and it makes it very, as you say, you're in it. But also, I have a walking practice, so I have my embodied practice, which was the walk, and then the film is almost a separate thing, if you like.
Yeah, the sense of rhythm that builds up over the course of the film, I think, is really interesting. And that was something when we were curating the programme, that we'd had a few films that explore extinction, but through looking at animals, particularly birds, which kind of is quite interesting with the curation process, that often these are just similar themes that people are thinking about at the same time. And when they submit films to us, we can find these rhythms between. And I think that was something that when we were thinking about which order to put them in, putting your film next to that conversation around extinction, I think was really interesting. But then the energy that the film has, I think, can then transfer us into a breathing space as well.
Yeah, I think you need that. I actually had forgotten that the Nile Birds was probably my favourite film. I think it's the most powerful for so many reasons. But actually, in my masters, I'm exploring, sort of moved on very much from psychogeography into thinking about ideas of vibrant matter. That actually, when I'm walking and the camera is seeing, but actually what you get is the world imprinting itself and making its own mark on the film. And occasionally Sizewell comes into view, always there. But actually, the sun rises and the rain comes down, and so that's it's got its own life, the dawn and the world, and it's carrying on without us. Am I making sense? I suppose.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
I thought, if I might say, I thought the diffused images of disappearing nature juxtaposed with the sound of the steam hammer, presumably driving in the piles to put in the new power station, I thought was very, very effective.
Thank you. And what I noticed, so I'd spend obviously a lot of time in that walking round and round, not just then, but I'm investigating that place and have a walking practice there at least once a week. And I noticed that the pile driver, the rhythm of it was the rhythm of my walking.
Yeah.
And I thought, now that's come together.
Yeah. And as if it's a kind of metronome for
exactly
the destruction of the environment.
That. And I, funnily enough, I had originally used a metronome as a soundtrack, and then I thought, oh no, and it didn't quite work. But I had done that. I worked out, so I use a Garmin to record my walks, so I knew what my cadence was. And I put that in the metronome, and it wasn't quite right. And then I heard the pile driver. I thought,
And matched it.
Yeah.
Really.
Very effective. It'd be really interesting actually, because we have some of your collaborators
I do.
in the space. Obviously, don't want to put them on the spot, but it'd be really interesting to hear a bit more about the collaborative element of your practice.
So
And how it works.
I very much, if you want to say something, please do. But if you don't want to say anything,
No pressure.
but I've always wanted to work with, specifically other women, but to actually go out and be in the landscape. So one of the things I thought about, one of my conceptual ideas in my dissertation was that there's lots of ways of thinking about how we might feel about what's going on at Sizewell. But I felt that very much, if I was just going to be there and walk round and round in circles for 5 hours, which is, not a normal thing to do, that it felt to me like resistance by persistence. I am going to be in this landscape, and we are going to be in this landscape. Certainly the first one, lots of people came to join us. The second one, there was weather. Only one person could endure. And over the years, collaborating and walking, and actually, so Jen is not an artist, but on the second spin, I said, how do you feel about the spins? What's your perspective from a non-artistic perspective? And she said, actually, it's just being with you. It's just being here. Actually, it's a way of, so outsourcing the making of the film to the camera and letting it do its own thing. Actually, the being and doing is enough.
I think that really comes across in the film, and particularly.
And preserving the moment.
Yes.
So actually, this would probably be a good time to throw questions out if anybody has any questions.
I have a structural question.
Yes.
Right. Film is generally slightly distorted and obscure, and 9 or 10 parts through the film, you bring in a very, very sharp image.
Mm.
Now, what was the reasoning behind bringing in those sometimes subliminal images? Sometimes they're a second, sometimes they're over before you realise.
Oh yes, you're absolutely yes. Sorry, I was wondering what you meant. Yeah. So thank you. I'd forgotten about that. So there'll be some where we probably stop to have a chat, or
The rainbow, for instance.
or maybe someone nipped off for a pee in the bushes. But I also I've been thinking about, certainly so this is slightly off piste, but I've also been thinking about the persistence by resistance, but also the spins as a kind of a protection rite, a ritual. So we always went clockwise until we realised that the time was running out, to sort of make a magic circle, and then we went backwards for the last one, just to not leave behind anything that might explode a man if he went in the magic circle. There's a Balkan legend, and at different points I'd stopped to make a little bit of land art, of anything that was there, just to I suppose almost like talismans, to sort of, and markers on the way round, and so I had to stop to make those. So in 5 seconds I was still. So and then we'd move on again. So.
Where you're wearing the camera?
Yeah, it's just here.
Just here.
Yeah, and then I.
But
And then I can
it's sort
walk.
of like an observer, though, in a way.
Yes,
So it's sort of watching you, but with you.
exactly. I mean, I sort of think about it as my sort of paraconscious. I've sort of outsourced that bit, so I don't have to think about that.
So you don't think about it, you just walk,
So
and
I've
then
set
get
up.
home and go, what did I get?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you're not going along going, oh, I'll just go there because that's
No.
going to look really good on
No.
film.
And funnily enough, I also because I wasn't sure if my batteries were going to last, I also did just a iPhone, and I didn't have anything with me so I stuck it in my pocket. And it's very interesting because of course it makes its own mind up about whether it wants to be portrait or landscape. The resulting film is unwatchable, but I've made a series of stills, which are sort of collages, and that's quite interesting because over the 5 hours, initially it's doing this, but by the end it's settled into stillness, which I still haven't thought that through yet. But I thought that was quite interesting.
So in spin, is there a whole 5 hours?
That was 5 hours.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Were you surprised with what the takes were?
Very. And some of the stills are like ghosts appearing. You know, the sunrise. I thought it would just completely burn out, but it didn't. You can see these sort of apparitions, which are just.
I got a
really
sense of
interesting.
paintings.
I was very much like a
I just think it's
was-
like an oil painting.
I was going to mention that it's a darkly impressionistic image, and I was wondering, were you influenced by some of the darker impressionistic landscapes of Peggy Somerville?
No, and I will be honest and say I do not know Peggy Somerville's work.
She's
so
also
I
a Suffolk artist,
I will write that down.
and was based near Woodbridge, which is where we are.
Wait, that's where we are. Why?
No, she
Similitude.
was a kind of late English impressionist, and some of her very dark images, I find I could relate to them because I'm a great admirer of hers, and I was finding that same quality of a dark impressionistic oil on the image.
That's really interesting. And when I
Yeah,
first
did you get that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I will definitely look her up. But no, I wasn't, because it was experimental. I didn't know what I was going to get. But what I did notice, the platform out in the sea, not the Kittiwake platform, but the one that's building the jetty.
Yeah.
The lights of that, as they did that, when I saw that, when I was processing them, I did have an insight that actually, years before, centuries before anyone had given you the ability to do a long exposure, that's how Turner was seeing things. To me.
I got an element of that as well, absolutely.
Yes,
And I thought that's actually incredible. I mean, obviously,
An
he
incredibly
was a genius,
smudged, smudged feeling that he achieved.
Yeah, wow.
Really cool.
And it'd be really interesting to hear a little bit. So you've got your graduation show from your MA, which, yes, if you're out and about in London, do go and see it.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you've been working on?
Yeah, so actually the spins were for my dissertation. So for my final show, I've been really thinking about the cliff collapses at Thorness, which I'm sure everyone's been aware of. And I mean, it's really, I've been thinking about it since, for 2 years, I suppose. And it started in my walks, going round and round and round. I noticed what looked like, in fact, Jen and I sort of found them in a walk at Dunwich, the very first one, and we tried to drag it away. These huge, heavy blankets.
Blankets?
Well, they look like blankets. They've got blanket stitch, and they're kind of tan, and they're huge, and they're just, and you may or may not notice them, but we noticed it, tried to drag it off the beach because it was clearly plastic. We thought, it was deathly heavy, and then I sort of forgot about it, and kept seeing them. More and more came. I thought, I've got to find out what this is. So I have been collecting them. My husband is very, I can't think what the word is, tolerant of these things appearing in the garden. I'm like, I'm going to use it in my work, it's going to be fine. So they were filled with gravel and stone, piled up under the cliff in 2012. They were thought they would last 60 years. And of course the wind and the sea has eroded them, and they're landscape material, they're polypropylene. And the stones, there's holes in them, so the stones all come out, and then they float off on the tide, because the longshore drift is north. but because of the, I can't think what the word is, but the literal, they're no beach at Sizewell and further north. So you will, if you look for them now, you'll see them all the time.
Wow.
And
And they were supposed to last 60
and
years.
they thought they might last that long.
But isn't, they've just put a whole load of new ones
They've got
down.
all the new ones down. And
So in about 5 or 6 years or 10 years.
I can go and
yeah.
collect them.
yeah. Well, apparently what happened is then, because they were working, but the sea then just came in around the back of them.
Yeah, that's it.
Force of nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you walked at Cove Height?
Yes, but not recently.
I find it a very fascinating experience because
It's a
of
beautiful
the
place.
medieval brickwork that washes up there from Dunwich.
Yes, absolutely, yes. I mean, I'm very interested in Dunwich, but I haven't used that in my work yet. I think
That's one for the future.
exactly. I'm
entire-
very slowly going north.
I found an entire wall there,
Wow,
an
it's
entire
extraordinary.
with a
isn't
sort of
yeah.
decoration on it, which is from perhaps the
Good
church.
images.
Yeah, and so that's what I'll be showing is I've been thinking about collecting all the mythology and the legends of this area, and so I've sort of thought about a mythology around these blankets. I sort of
It's
If it-
growing.
well,
Okay.
I'm sort of thinking them about a menopausal woman, you know, that there they were all pregnant with these stones, and everyone thought they were going to be all right for ages. They're holding up all these homes, holding up all these lives, and then they're like, oh, I've had enough of this, I'm swimming off north. Thanks very much. Anyway.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jules. Thanks very much for
Yes.
coming. And it's been delightful to host you here at the Southwest one here, so thank you for bearing with us with a few protection teething troubles. We hope to be back in the future, hopefully around May sort of time.